We're talking with Robert Adams, and he is professor of architecture at the University of Michigan, but his studio is Adams and Gilpin Studio, and very personal nature what he is working on, as he mentioned, because of muscular dystrophy running in his family, and in particular with his beautiful daughter. In your booklet that I'm looking at here of the design, you write, ramp as continuous loop, a surface delivering a sense of weightlessness, the euphoria of vertigo for bodies unable to ride a roller coaster, or jump off a diving board, or run slowly moving bodies, and quicken space. Topologically, a clothoid derived from the mathematics of accelerating.
Right. So a clothoid. Yeah. I worked with this a good friend of mine, Robbie Linkner, and he's a fantastic designer in the automotive industry.
Okay.
And when he's not working as a designer, he's making his own motorcycles from scratch. A really amazing person. He's been incredibly helpful with the advanced geometry in the project. So this loop isn't just a simple roller coaster lineal loop or a cylinder. It's a really special kind of loop where you can feel its energies of compression and decompression when you move through it. So after you move through the loop, as you continue upstream through the ramp, it becomes a little bit more closed. And then you enter a series of frames. So you're going within a frame, within a frame, within a frame. And each frame has a parallel set of what are called artificial pneumatic muscles. And a pneumatic muscle works with air rather than, it works like our biological muscles, so that when you contract that muscle, it shortens. And when this thing fills with air, it also shortens, but then it works like a lever, so that the structure of the whole part, this part of the ramp, actually moves, gracefully, gently. So as one moves through the thing, the space is always opening up in front of you. You move through it, and it closes down behind you. And this idea comes from a structure like if a wheelchair is an extension of one's body, or if our eyeglasses are extensions of our bodies, or someone walking with a cane is an extension of one's body. These are all assistive devices. And I'm really interested in architecture that's a furtherance of that. So it's really the place where, in the world of design with PDAs, iPads, phones, technologies that are all personal to our body, and then institutions, I think there's a huge gap for us to really explore in terms of the civic space.
This is so wild. We're talking with Robert Adams, and he is professor of architecture at the University of Michigan, but his studio is Adams and Gilpin Studio, and very personal nature what he is working on, as he mentioned, because of muscular dystrophy running in his family, and in particular with his beautiful daughter. What has she said about this?
Oh, she's been crucial to the work, both as a critic, advocate. It's been really interesting. It's led us into a series of discussions that I never anticipated having with anybody, let alone our daughter.
She's actually been on the prototype, and
the prototype it's a smaller scale thing, so it's about 13 feet long.
Has she had the experience though from that?
You can play the thing. There's actually a keyboard component to it that you can play like a piano. And then the other part of the simulation is there's if you know the game Connect, the Xbox Connect,
yes,
where you're working in an infrared field to activate things. This project has a large infrared field around it. So you can't see it, but you can interact with it. Wow. And when you move into this space, it becomes like this huge responsive environment.
For those that are watching this on YouTube, Damian Farrell, all you have to do is look for Damian Farrell on YouTube, and you can come across all of our Damian on Design segments. I'd like you to demonstrate, if you would, Robert Adams,
sure,
the pneumatic portion of this that you were describing earlier.
This is a small prototype of what one of the muscles look like. And it's silicone medical grade tubing captured inside. This is actually just like cable management, like a two-way woven structure. And then it's capped on each end with pressurized
It's a piece about
air.
6 inches long, and it's connected to a compressed air bottle.
And then you can hear it. It just blew off the end.
Yeah, but as the air comes out, it makes...
It expands and so shortens.
Right.
As it expands, it contracts.
It seems like pneumatic things have been used, obviously, in design, haven't they?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, They were designed by a person named McKibben after World War II.
Oh,
And then I think, for whatever reason, that research wasn't picked up. And then in the 90s, pneumatic muscles came into robotics. And now they're actually very common within the robotics field for fine movement.
couldn't you take this even a step further? We're talking about persons with disabilities. Quite frankly, all of us have a disability of some kind.
Yes, I agree.
When we think about airplanes, which have rigid type of seating, and I just heard this week that they're trying to do a thinner profile seat so they can fit more in.
Right.
You know, it's all about cost savings and all of that.
Right.
And it's been a huge problem because people are not the same body type.
Yeah.
Theaters, that sort of thing. Something like a pneumatic chair maybe would help, where
Right.
you could expand or decrease it depending on one size in it, or there's all sorts of applications for what you're.
Sure. And in another direction, you can imagine an architecture that's constantly adjusting to the
Yes.
needs of one's
Yeah.
body or the needs of a situation.
Right.
And
Yeah.
this is for some the world of science fiction, but for others, like in the automotive industry or in areas of architecture, people thinking about more responsive environments with things like pervasive computing, the Internet of Things. These are concepts that are in the air right now that are about higher degrees of connectivity and also performativity in things, and how our bodies begin to impress themselves on space rather than being constantly under the pressure of the space.
Yeah.
Wow. When do you hope to be able to get this to market?
You know, right now we're scaling up the prototype and doing one-to-one testing, so that's really crucial to the work itself. And then I'm looking for markets to develop it. So I have a project that's in a sense looking for a commission. So part of that is developing a capital campaign to fund it, to fund the research, and also to fund the furtherance of the prototype.
What would be the ideal application for the first one, as far as being a high profile or the marketing of it?
You know, there's been some conversations about doing something here at the University of Michigan on campus, also in New York City and Washington, D.C. So I think some high-profile version of this thing being installed. I don't see it as like this is a piece of architecture that's permanent and it's a 50-year piece of architecture. I think it's like a piece that can go in and out. It can do work in terms of advocacy, in terms of performing something, and then it can stir a debate around this issue of disability.
How much would it cost?
This version right now, this is probably the most expensive wheelchair accessible.
But the most beautiful.
But I think
And elegant.
you know the research and the build is probably about $1.8 million, and that's not just building the ramp. That's also building up the discussion, building up the technologies, building up the conversations and
Whole story
necessary
about this.
research to get this work out there.
Yeah.
Phenomenal, absolutely incredible. I had no idea this was going on over in the strip mall where Plum
Yeah.
Market
I
is.
think part of it is thanks to a mutual friend as well, Tobin Siebers,
Yep.
who's a friend of John's
Right.
and yours as well. And Tobin is a professor in English literature here at the university, and probably one of the reasons, for sure one of the reasons why disability studies is now a discourse. We recognize
Yes, it
it
is.
as a thing within any university, and lots of universities now have programs in disability studies, and he was a key player in developing that. And one thing, when I first met Tobin about 3 years ago, he said, "Oh, this is a really interesting project. Here's a few books that I've written about disability, and let's continue the conversation." So I picked up one of his books called Disability Theory, which prior to that I had no idea that disability had a theory at all, but it actually has multiple
Seems like it's pretty
theories.
practical, doesn't it?
Right. And there's one aphorism or quote that came out of that book that I've just run with, fully with the work. And Tobin writes, "When a disabled body moves into any space, it discloses the social body implied by that space."
Yeah.
And the terms for that are really interesting. The social body is this collective body. This is all of us,
Right.
And how we map
Yeah.
the space and the policies and building codes and uses and all that stuff. It's just like
Right.
the social body is
Yeah.
generic space. But when a disabled body moves into that space, when a disabled body goes through the shopping mall, and people stop, and
Yeah.
they give a look, or they
Yeah.
look out of the corner of the, you know, a disabled body can arrest a space in ways that I think are profound, in ways that we need to understand more thoroughly, in that disabled persons, just like any other part of culture, produces a set of knowledges, unique types
Right.
of knowledge that are important
Culture,
to social.
the culture of it has to change. When we look at institutions like schools and other places that obviously with a finite amount of money, they're always thinking about ways that, okay, we have to do up to
Yes.
code, we have to do the bare minimum, but they're not thinking creatively. You're thinking
Yeah,
creatively. And we have to, I think, incorporate that into our overall culture for all human beings.
Yeah, I
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. You know, the codes do allow us to manage buildings and to allow disability. So, you know, a threshold, the width of a door, a 5-foot turning radius, access to an elevator, a ramp with a handle on it that doesn't run more than 20 feet. That's at a certain slope. This is taking it to an art form and a sensitivity. It's just beautiful.
Well,
It's so elegant.
And it is an art form, but I love the word of sensitivity.
Yeah.
Because, you know, all of a sudden we all become equal in this space.
Yeah.
Beautiful
Because, you know,
job.
if I'm very able, I can go to some of those playthings. I can jump in those big boxes full of plastic balls and feel weightlessness and go down slides and so on. This is an opportunity for someone who is in that wheelchair experience to impact their space and see things as they move, things around them move. This rib cage, if you will, moves with them. Otherwise, their world's pretty static. They can't get out and do the stuff that any able-bodied can. You can't just go dive into a tank of water and feel that weightlessness 3 feet under the water. You know, this is what we have to be doing.
Beautiful work.
Thank you so
Absolutely
much.
stunning.
Thank you.
It's so nice to meet you, and I wish you well, and I'm looking forward to continuing to watch your career and where all of this is going.
Right here in Ann Arbor. eh?
That's right.
Right
that's
in our town. Yeah,
Robert
that's
Adams, thank you very much.
Thank you so
What's
much.
your daughter's first name?
Celeste.
Celeste.
Yes.
I won't forget her.
Yeah.
Thank you. And for more information about your work, where can people go to learn more?
If you go to Taubman College's main page, through the University of Michigan, I have my own personal web page under the faculty directory.
All right, Robert Adams is his name. Our special guest today on Damian on Design, along with Damian Farrell from Damian Farrell Design Group. And I never knew the Asclepius. I didn't know the name, but we've all seen the serpents intertwined on there. Thank you so much. You're listening to Ann Arbor's Talk Station, 1290 WLBY.